Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is William, the Redhead Engineer, and today we're going to be going over the setup of an organization in Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, specifically focusing on the use of legacy authentication protocols. Now, if you've watched my last video, you've seen how easy it is to set up without the use of these legacy protocols, but today we're going to be focusing on these specifically. The primary reason, as you can find out more inside of the console itself, Veeam does have the ability to continue to back up dynamic distribution groups and public folder mailboxes. This is a restriction that is given without the use of these legacy authentication protocols, so if you are one of the customers who are interested in dynamic distribution groups specifically and public folder mailboxes, this is the setup video for you. Now today, we've already installed the Office 365 solution, and this is a completely clean install. So the only thing that I have done prior to this is set up a backup repository and set up our retention. But today, we're going to be focusing primarily around the authentication side. Now this will serve as a video guide for the beginning of 2021, but as you Microsoft admins know out there, Azure AD is constantly changing. So I will try to keep these videos in this series up to date as best I can, but feel free to leave a comment down below if you guys have any updates or any questions about any changes. So today, we're going to go ahead and start off inside of Veeam to just allow these legacy authentication protocols. And we're also primarily going to be following the guide over at virtualhome.blog. This is a fantastic guide that was released back in 2019, and I have recommended it to customers in the past to follow. Of course, as I mentioned, Microsoft has changed up a few things. So what we're going to be able to do today is show you how you can still follow this guide, but get a successful result out of the new and improved dashboards. So as you can see on our screen, we're primarily going to need to set up an application ID with an app secret, and then a user account with not only a username, but an app password. So what I've done is I've already logged into my Office 365 Admin Center, so you can see we're here as Contoso Electronics. Jumping into Azure AD specifically, our first step is going to be setting up this application. So inside of the organization, we'll want to drop down to app registrations here, and we're going to register a new application. Now with this registration, you can give the name whatever you would like. And in this case, I'm going to follow the same naming structure presented from the guide from virtualhome.blog that I've listed down below, but feel free to change this to whatever you can really work for you. So here, we have Veeam Backup for Office 365 Modern Authentication. We are going to do this just for the main directory and keep everything else by default. Once we register this application, now it's a matter of punching in the permissions. This is where things do start to differ from the guide, and so I will also link below and have already pulled up the Veeam user guide for version 5.0. Right here at the very bottom of the page under required permissions, these are all of the permissions we will need to access and get this solution up and running. So the biggest changes from the guide is that we still need to add SharePoint and Exchange APIs. So that is something specific I'll be going into today. But for right now, we'll jump back in and get started. Adding in the permissions, very first thing we can start with is the Microsoft Graph API. So this is the most straightforward one. We can go ahead and add in these application permissions. And we're going to start off with directory read all, group read all, and if you are backing up Teams data, Teams settings.read-write all. Now, once we go ahead and add these in, we will go ahead and then enable admin access for all of these. So I'll add these two permissions. Grant admin consent. And then our step is to go back in outside of Microsoft Graph API, drop down to SharePoint here, where as you can see in our guide, we will need user read all and sites full control. So same exact process. We're using application permissions here, site full control as I mentioned, and user read all. We'll add both of these, and when we go back to finally add the exchange, you'll notice that there is no exchange option traditionally under these APIs. This is something we have to manually search for. So we'll jump over to APIs used by my organization, and you can go ahead and type in Office 365 Exchange Online. This will go ahead and pull up those APIs. We're still doing the application side, of course, and here we just need, right at the very top, full access as application. So once we have added these in, we'll go ahead and grant admin consent, agree to this, and your permissions inside of your application should look something like this. From there, that's the easiest part of today. Now we can jump back to the overview and go ahead and grab this application ID. If you remember, inside of Veeam, that is the very first thing we need. So we can go ahead and paste that ID here. And our next step, just like in the wizard of Veeam, is to go ahead and access this secret now, or create an application secret. That can still be done inside of Azure AD. So secure certificates and secrets here, and we'll go ahead and create a new client secret. Now this is just for my test account. I can go ahead and set these to expire, but in this case, I'll set it to never and give it a name. There we are. Once I add in my secret, we will be able to go ahead and copy this value, and this is the only time that this value will appear. So it's very important that we grab it right away. If we try to refresh that page, it will start filtering that out. All in all, a very straightforward piece so far. We now have your secret, we have the application ID, and the application inside of Azure AD is primarily set up. Now the second half of this is where we go in to set up the user account itself. Jumping into users, we're going to go ahead and create a new user. Of course, you can go ahead and use anything from the global administrator permissions already, but this is traditionally best practices for a full-blown deployment is to create a new service account here. So in this case, following the same naming structure, we'll underscore Veeam underscore VBO, and that can be our username and our name here. In terms of the password, I'll just go ahead and create one of my own passwords here just as the initial password, and that will go ahead and get everything spun up. The remainder of it, that can go ahead and stay the same. Now once this user is created, we're going to go ahead and enable multi-factor authentication for that user. Now this is just a test account inside of Azure AD and 365, so I haven't set up multi-factor authentication for everyone else. This will be our first user to show up. In this case, naming it Veeam, we show up right here at the end. So Veeam underscore VBO, I'm going to go ahead and enable multi-factor. And then one big step that a lot of people miss is coming back here and enforcing that MFA. This is a very big piece, very easy to miss. So make sure that you have not only enabled, but you're also enforcing multi-factor authentication on this user. From there, now we go ahead, jump back into Azure AD, hop into that user we just created, and now we can go ahead and assign roles to this user. Under assignments, if you would like, traditionally we recommend giving this Exchange admin and SharePoint admin to the role itself, but just because this is my test lab, I will go ahead and just add in the Global Administrator role. Again, not something we recommend in a full-blown deployment, but that's going to give us all the permissions we need here. Now from there, we have now set up our user account and our application inside of Azure AD, so we're really almost there to getting everything configured. Now it's just a matter of going into Exchange, and inside the Exchange Admin Center, we're going to be able to set up the remainder of this account and enable application impersonation. So, hopping back into the Admin Center, We'll open up Exchange. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also see Azure has also changed up the Exchange Admin Center. So we will still be using the older version for now, but we'll look at updating this once that newer version is fully up. Under permissions though, keeping it under the default admin role, we can go ahead and add a new role group. Now again, you can name this whatever you want. So Veeam MFA, App Impersonation. So we'll keep it here. Our roles, Application Impersonation, will be right here at the top. So we'll add Application Impersonation here, and then add our Veeam_VBO member. Now, if for any reason, if you do not see Veeam_VBO inside of Exchange Admin Center, just give this about 10 or 20 minutes just for Office 365 to catch up with itself. Occasionally, if you guys are doing this very quickly, it won't show up in this list. So give it a couple minutes, give it a refresh, and that should show up. Thankfully, we got lucky here. So once I add in the member and Application Impersonation, we can go ahead and save this. And there you are. Now we have Application Impersonation set up, we have our users, we have our application, so we are almost there in terms of full configuration. Now it's just a matter of getting that application secret. Now there are a couple ways to set up this secret. In this case, what I'll go ahead and do is sign out of this account, sign back in to the new user account that I just created, and we'll go ahead and walk through the steps of setting up that application password. All right, welcome back everyone. So what we've done so far, I've gone ahead and signed into that new user account we've created. I've set up my authenticator on my mobile, as well as setting up my phone verification for MFA. So now it comes time to set up the application password itself. Now, here we're just giving it a name to go ahead and remember what this is, because our application password is going to be very important. It's only going to show up once, and we want to go ahead and remember this because every time you try and do a restore inside of Veeam, it will prompt you for this user account as well as that application password. So this is to keep your environment secure. We're going to constantly prompt for those credentials, so definitely save this inside of any type of password manager you want. So as you can see, there's my password. We'll go ahead, paste this into our account, and now we're finally ready to finish everything up. I'll grab my login to my test user account, punch that into my username, so we have now finished all of our configuration. We have set up a new application with proper permissions. We've set up a secret along with that application, and then a user account with application impersonation and a newly enabled or created app password. From there, all you're going to do is hit next. And as you can see, we roll through this wizard. Veeam is making sure we have all of these proper permissions inside of Graph and PowerShell and SharePoint, and we're just going to let it check everything. Now for this specific setup video, I have not enabled Teams backup just because of the trial limitations for Office, but if you are a Teams user, make sure you input those Teams permissions as well. But there we are, everyone. That is how easy it is to go ahead and set up this application with application impersonation. It is a couple extra steps, but hopefully this tutorial video will help you all out. Hope this helped everyone. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything else you'd like to see in the future, leave it in the comments below. Have a good one though, everyone. See you next time.